There are three sacred forces that power the Balkan people: cheese, meat, and bread. And in this video, we're gonna unite them all to make the legendary, humbling Karadjordjeva Schnitzel, also known as the Maiden's Dream. But first, a little history on this girthy, iconic dish. It was back in 1956 in former Yugoslavia, particularly in Belgrade, Serbia. The daughter-in-law of President Tito Borziv was visiting a restaurant called Golf Restaurant, owned by Serbian chef Mića Stojanović. So the legend goes she was craving a big piece of meat and ordered the chicken Kiev, which was on the menu, a deep fried chicken roll stuffed with herbs and butter. But then Mića realized he had no more chicken, no herbs, and no Kiev, which is basically the whole dish. Mića must have looked at his sous chef thinking, how could this possibly happen, especially with such a high-profile guest visiting? But they didn't give up and also valued their life. So they started to brainstorm. They had fresh veal, they had a whole kitchen of ingredients. And just before all hope was lost, there it was, staring right at them. Friggin' kaimak. The heavy, richer, and tangier version of cream cheese. So what did Mića do? He banged that veal like his life depended on it. He put that cheesy butter onto the veal, rolled it up into a phallic-like shape, and then threw it in the deep fryer. But he also needed a name for this dish, so he named it after Đorđe Petrović, a Serbian revolutionary leader who led the struggle against the Ottoman Empire during the first Serbian uprising, more commonly known as Karageorge. And Kara means black, so it translates to Black George because of his black features, like his hair and his eyes are very dark. But I'm sure it's open to interpretation. So out the kitchen he came, confidently serving the Karadjordjeva for the very first time. And she friggin' loved it. It was a massive success. So much so that Tito learned about this night out and he made Mića his personal chef, where he stayed with for 25 years until his death. Today, the Karadjordjeva still remains one of the most popular dishes in the entire Balkans, also earning the name as the Maiden's Dream. Although I'm not too quite sure why, I guess that's also open for interpretation. Now, let's learn how to make it. I'm going to be using pork loin as my meat, and I'm going to be making it two ways today. One is going to be the original way, and another variation that you may find in some restaurants. Of course, Mića made his with veal, but I couldn't find any veal and I didn't want to go look for it. Beautiful thing about making this too is you don't need too many ingredients or tools. You're gonna want to have a meat tenderizer. If you can't find one lodged somewhere deep in your cabinets, don't worry at all. You can always borrow one from your mom. And for the breading, you're gonna need some breadcrumbs, but not like the panko kind because they're a bit too chunky and fluffy. I would go for something a little bit more fine. We're gonna beat a few eggs in our dish for our egg wash. One piece of advice when you're prepping, just make sure you have enough bowls before you start that are big enough. Don't ask me how I know. And a bowl of some all-purpose flour. So set this to the side and now we can begin working the meat. So using the spiky side, I'm just gonna beat the meat until it's really thin. It's not only gonna help with the rolling, but it's also gonna make sure it's cooked all the way through. Now, I've never really beat meat like this before. You could put some like saran wrap or something over it so you're not flinging meat everywhere, but I also don't want to get a bunch of plastic inside my meat, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I'm gonna really try and make it as long and as flat as possible, just so we can have enough surface area to comfortably put in the cheese and roll it up. I'll also flip it a couple times and hit it from the other side as well. I'm not sure if it's a skill issue or because of the type of meat I got, but it's starting to form like a trapezoid shape, although it shouldn't really be an issue. Now my arm's starting to get sore, so I think I beat it thin enough. The next step is to get our kaimak. As I mentioned before, it's a richer, creamier version of cream cheese. I wouldn't dare put Philadelphia cream cheese inside something like this. I feel like I'd be haunted by Baba Roga or something if I did that. Although it is kind of intriguing. I feel like it would Americanize it a bit, you know? Now, in the Balkans, they don't really measure cheese. That's just the kind of nonsense we do in North America. So we're gonna measure with our hearts and desire. And there is really no limit to how much cheese I desire on things. So I'm gonna probably put a bit more than you should, but you can adjust as necessary. Now we're gonna sprinkle on the salt and pepper. The kaimak is also saltier than regular cream cheese, so you don't have to overdo it. Now I'm just gonna make sure these edges are very thin because we're gonna nip and tuck it in when we roll it. And looking at it now, I probably put in a bit too much cheese.
You are one pathetic loser.
But there's really no going back now, so we're gonna have to work with it. So I'm just gonna fold the flappies over and then gently roll it into the phallic shape. And there you go. We're basically 50% of the way there. Now, this step is completely optional. I just wanted to get a bit more uniform in shape. This is a technique I learned from Gordon Ramsay when he was making his beef Wellington. So I'm just going to roll it in there, and I'm going to put it in the fridge for maybe about 10 to 15 minutes so it gets a little bit stiffer. You don't want it in the fridge too long because you don't want the center to get too cold and then not cook after. Now, after about 15 minutes, I took it out of the fridge and I took it out of the saran wrap, and it just reverted back to its original shape. So you can pretty much just skip that whole entire step. Now, I'm going to be dunking it in the flour. Make sure you also get the tips on each side. Step number 2 is dunking it inside the egg wash, and finally into the breadcrumbs. You really want to make sure it's fully covered, so just sprinkle some on top, all around, and here it is, the original Karadjordjeva Schnitzel. I think it's going pretty good. I mean, I've never made this before, so I guess we'll find out. Now, on to Karadjordjeva number 2. So we're going to repeat the exact same process. We're going to beat that meat until it's very, very flat. This time it formed more of a triangle, which is kind of what I was going for. I like having that little tip of meat at the top because it helps with closing, especially when you overload the Karadjordjeva. Now, the second variation is something that you can find in some restaurants where, for whatever reason, someone decided that, you know, the Karageorge doesn't have enough cheese or meat inside it already. And I kind of agree with that, so I'm excited to make this variation as well. So cheese commonly used is something more nutty or smoky to add that extra depth of flavor to the Karageorjeva. And then another piece of ham is usually added. However, I got prosciutto, nice and thinly sliced, so I think it's going to work out well. After getting a few slices of prosciutto on there, we're going to add that kaimak again. As you can see, it looks like I may have added too much kaimak for a second time. I'm desperately beating that tip of the meat there just to see if I can get a little more leverage. I'm just going to use a spoon here just to kind of shove it in a bit more. And then we're just going to go for the roll and see what happens. So it looks like there's a big gaping piece of cream cheese sticking out here. I don't think we close it all the way around, but hopefully with the breading process, we can seal that shut. And this thing has got some weight to it. I'm going to call this the Big George. Definitely need 2 hands for this one. Now, we're going to repeat the breading process, and this time I'm going to bread this one 2 times because I think it has a high chance of busting prematurely, and you really don't want all that kaimak to come out of it when you're cooking it. We want to make sure it stays inside. And this, my friends, is the Big George. Now, earlier when I told you I didn't have any veal, I lied. I did actually find it. So I'm just going to make a third variation with veal because I want to see what the difference in taste and texture is like. I repeated all of the processes the exact same way and made the exact same mistakes until I arrived at our third Karageorjeva. So now we have a total of 3 Karageorjevas. We have 2 monsters and 1 average Joe. It looks like I could have done a bit of a better job on breading the tips, but I think it should be fine. Now for frying, I'm going to use some clarified butter, also known as ghee, and that's because Instagram kind of made me scared to cook with seed oils, but you can fry it with whatever you want. So I'm gonna set the stovetop to medium high and wait until my $40 worth of ghee heats up. Then I'm gently gonna lay the Karageorjevas in one by one. Now I'm getting a lot of oil splatter here, so I'm just gonna reduce it to medium and let it cook. You also want to make sure that the Karageorjevas are almost fully covered when you put them in. This way they're gonna be able to cook all the way through. Now let me guys give you a little bit of a VIP ASMR treatment here. And after about 5 to 6 minutes or until golden brown on the bottom, we're just gonna give it a flip. It looks like one of the Karageorjevas are pre-kaimaking already. I can't even tell which one's which anymore, to be honest, but it doesn't look too bad. Now, after about a few more minutes and the second Karageorjeva started to burst a bit, I'm gonna say these are probably pretty done. They look nice and gold all around. In the Balkans, there is no such thing as food thermometers or nonsense like that. You just kind of have to feel it out and use your eyes. Now, while the Karageorjeva cools down for a few minutes, I'm gonna make a quick tartar sauce, which is very traditional. And I don't know if it was my boy Micha or somebody else, but I guess they thought the Karageorjeva wasn't heavy enough, so why not just add a mayo-based sauce to it? Which, again, I tend to agree with. So this tartar sauce I stole from somebody is super simple to make. It literally takes like 2 minutes. All you're gonna need is some mayo, diced pickles, chopped onions, dill, and a squeeze of lemon. I'll put in the link in the description below if I can find it again. First, I'm gonna cut into the original Karageorjeva, the same one that Maiden would have had that one night, just meat and cheese. Let's see what kind of a cheese pull we get. This is what I imagine my arteries are gonna look like after I finish eating this, but it looks like it's cooked all the way through. Did I maybe go overboard with the cheese? Perhaps, but I'm definitely not mad about it. The breading is super crunchy. It's very well seasoned. The kaymak is basically a sauce in itself. I don't think this one really needs a tartar sauce. A tip maybe is you don't have to flatten it so much. You could have it a little bit thicker in the middle and put a little bit less cheese if you're lactose intolerant like me. Overall though, I think this turned out better than I expected, and I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. Now we're gonna move on to Big Black George. I'm gonna add the tartar sauce on top of it. Now I'm gonna put a disclaimer on this video. You should definitely consult your doctor before eating this thing. The Karageorjeva is also typically served with a plate of fries on the side or some roasted potato, but I'm gonna opt out this time. And a squeeze of lemon also goes a long way to kind of balance out the richness and creaminess. All right, let's cut inside and give it a try. You can see the prosciutto and the Edam cheese nicely melted inside. The pork looks perfectly cooked, and honestly, I think I like it even better. The smoky flavor from the cheese and from the prosciutto just adds another layer of depth to it. You get the nice dill and lemon flavor from the tartar sauce, and it is of course extremely rich. I'm gonna give this Karadjordjeva a 9.5 out of 10. I can definitely see why it's called a maiden's dream. It will definitely leave you full and satisfied and satiated for a very long time. Last, and definitely looks like the least, we have our Karadjordjeva made with our veal cutlet. It looks like a lot of the kaymak got absorbed into the meat. After tasting it, it definitely has a milder, more delicate flavor. The cheese, prosciutto, and kaymak is definitely a bit more prominent in this one than the pork ones. So if you're looking for something more tender and more milder, I would definitely suggest the veal. But this Karadjordjeva also deserves a 9 out of 10. So guys, let me know if you want me to make more dishes from the Balkans. I feel like there's an abundance of dishes that are left to be explored with a rich history like the Karadjordjeva Schnitzel. I really enjoyed making this one, and if you guys did too, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.